thingies here. Yeah, going to be on my laptop.
Right. Are you putting this on the Facebook? Huh? Can you do that? Huh?
I can record it, yeah, as long as you don't show any of the kids on the screen.
Right.
That's all. Guys, right, you need to shut up now. Just let me get on here. Actually, need to.
Go on the Wi-Fi.
Oh, Wi-Fi, yeah. Are you going to get free? Right, you're on mute.
No.
Mute.
No, it is.
Hello. Why is that?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Curtis?
I can. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. Just we're just playing around with the technology.
It looks like you've got it all set up.
Yeah, we're getting there. So can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
See both screens.
Right. Can you see both screens, Curtis, at your end?
Yeah, I can see Keith's and I can see John's. Yours, sorry.
Right. You just do some talking, Shane, just so it picks you up.
Yeah, so you can see Lucy the long-line Spitfire.
No, I can't hear Keith mobile. You might have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Got you now.
Right.
Right, excellent. So what we're going to do, Curtis, we're going to have to, because the building obviously echoes quite a bit.
Yeah.
We're going to switch between mute and unmute.
Oh yeah, no worries.
And we're going to wander around, but obviously, as you might be able to hear in the background, there's helicopters coming and going, and this, that, and the other. We've got a resident blackbird that keeps hassling us. So just let the kids know it's not a German fighter; it's a blackbird that keeps whizzing about. So
Yeah, we'll do.
So we'll play around with it a bit. We'll do a bit of a walking tour and what have you, and we'll stick to that schedule.
Sounds great.
If like I said, we'll aim to finish at 1:30, and then if there's anything else you want us to do in the future, we can do it later on, can't we?
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Is that all right?
Yeah. So hopefully all the other classes should be joining at past.
Right. Okay. So
okay.
We'll leave this running. We're just going to mute now, and then we're going to do a quick walking tour, and then we'll be back with you.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you.
Brilliant. See you in a minute.
See you in a minute.
See you, mate. Bye bye.
There's no echo, right?
Propeller, four-bladed propeller, cut a lot of air out and made a fly at 410 to 40 miles an hour in level flight. And an incredibly good aircraft, very agile. And she's armed with this black-looking affair here, which we call a Hispano cannon. That's a big cannon, and that was mounted in the wings of Lucy, and I will show you those. There's a round down there, which is quite. So if I put my hand next to it, that will give you. So it's a big piece of.
Right. So we need to get the video off. 6HR. Or we can.
The cannon here, and the cannon would be inside that wing. So we'll move around the aircraft now a little bit. Okay. Now, if you look at Lucy here, just bear with me a moment. That's right. If you look at Lucy, she has a green and grey camouflage. If you ever do get the chance to visit us, and we hope you all do, you will find that camouflage of this colour was not the early war type of camouflage, and I will show you why in a moment. So if you just follow me. So what we're going to try and do now is show you inside the cockpit of Lucy where the pilot would sit. So we'll just camera them to go up there if you can, just nice and carefully, and it will let you see inside the canopy, or the cockpit rather. Okay, it's quite a complicated piece of equipment in there. So bear in mind, by the time you're 18, 19, 20 years of age, you might be sat in that cockpit flying in combat. Lucy would normally have in combat 40 minutes of fuel or 400 miles in range. Having said that, if she was flown on a delivery type of thing, in other words, not in combat, nice and straight and level flying on a nice weather day, they would get a good 600 miles out of it, but very careful flying. But in combat, only 400 miles, and as I say, 40 minutes in combat. You look down Lucy's tail here, she has got black and white stripes on. That was an indicator for troops on the ground after D-Day. During the D-Day invasion of Europe, all aeroplanes operating over Europe would carry black and white stripes. In other words, if you're a soldier, American or British, going into France, don't shoot me down. So that tells them not to shoot at you. You're giving them a hand. Right. So we're nearly there on that. So we're now going over to Vicky. Rosen.
I think you're on mute, Keith.
No, no, go.
Okay, carry on. Just passing a refueling bowser. What this did is refuel aeroplanes. So you're on an airport or an airfield. You need to put petrol in all of the aircraft. So you'd have a vehicle similar to this. Look above it, and you can see those booms on the top, just like the petrol station your dad's car goes into. Those would have pumps on, and there it is. Look, that's just like your dad would go to the petrol station and fill the aircraft up with petrol. Okay, so go around here. Now we're approaching Vicky. Vicky is a Mark II Spitfire. That's an earlier Mark. This was 1939, 1940. Lucy over there was 1942 onwards. The German Luftwaffe and the engineers in Germany are fantastic engineers, and their aeroplanes were advanced better and better and better as the wartime went through. However, the British engineers were just good, and that's why there were various marks of Spitfire to get at the better, faster, more agile, and even more deadly. So to keep pace with the German Luftwaffe, and by the way, if you don't know what the Luftwaffe means, it's in simple German for air force. So Luft is air, Waffe is force. Okay, look at Vicky. She only got 3 blades on the propeller because it was an earlier Mark, 1939-40. And if you were flying in the Battle of Britain, where Germany wanted to invade the UK, firstly, the Luftwaffe had to destroy our air force to give the ground troops time to come across the English Channel and attack us. However, the Royal Air Force, if you don't know what the Battle of Britain was, it was the biggest air battle in history by a large margin. The Hurricane and Spitfire destroyed so many Luftwaffe aircraft over the English Channel and south of England, the Kent fields, that they had to give up the idea of an invasion. So they were very, very brave people in World War II. And for the girls in the audience, lady participation was massive, both in terms of engineering, radar girls, but even pilots who flew them to deliver them. So it wasn't, World War II was not all about men. The ladies were equally involved in the war. And without them, we couldn't have even taken on German enemy. So we just walk around a little bit further. Now, if you look at Vicky here, she's a Mark II, keep saying, she's got brown and green camouflage on, because it was seen when the park's on the ground during the day, it mimics the background. And in the air, it was okay. But what we found over the sea, particularly the North Sea and the English Channel, the brown stood out more. Hence the reason why Lucy over there became grey and green, because it matches the water a little bit better. And if you look at modern day fighters, they're a light grey and they can virtually reflect the colour of the sky, the colour of the ground. And that's why camouflage is very important. Okay? So if we walk to the front here, I'll show you her, hammer guns. Now, if you look underneath Vicky, behind each of these red squares are 4 Browning machine guns, 303s. And those, well, Okay, sorry about that. So the 303 bullets would be fired through this machine gun from inside the cockpit, and you've got 4 of those. So imagine the damage, but 4 lots of bullets on both sides of the aeroplane. So that's 8 machine guns firing at another aircraft. That was all the 15 seconds of ammunition. That's all you ever had. So there was enough ammunition across 8 guns for 15 seconds. So if you see television in Hollywood or video games all day long firing, no way. 15 seconds. So they did short bursts in 2 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. And that's how they did it. Because once you're out of ammunition, you're no longer a fighter. You have to go on. So that's our Vicky. Now then, lovely aircraft. Now where's John? Okay. Right, so go over to our chairman now. We're going to take you on a walking tour.
Hi again, guys. Sorry for those brief interruptions. I see you've seen Lucy and Vicky there. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to walk round the offices of Hangar 42 at Blackpool Airport. So, as you know, you've seen the aircraft out in the hangar, and obviously, in support of the aircraft, there have been lots of men and women working here at Blackpool Airport, RAF Squires Gate, looking after those aircraft. But there was also people working behind the scenes in offices, in things like flight training, flight planning, should I say, mission planning, in rooms like this. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see the room behind me and how it's decorated. So I'm sure none of you will have these colours in your house at home, but every military building would have had this same colour scheme in the offices when they were built, and the hangars. You can see some of the mannequins here, and we talked about a pilot before, and here we've got an original uniform, and this uniform was a Polish airman called Bielaki. His family donated his uniform to us, and this young man came over from Poland in World War II and flew Wellington bombers. Did his training here at Blackpool Airport and flew Wellington bombers. So only a little lad, really, when you think about it, 19 years of age, flying Wellington bombers, and that's his original uniform that he wore when he was flying around. We've also got other air crew. So you saw the aircraft. So here again is a sergeant. This is how he would have been dressed while he was flying his aircraft. So this is a sergeant's uniform from the RAF, and you can see you can see the room around me. So this is where all the mission planning would have taken place. And then, obviously, as you know, you've just probably had your lunch break at school. We're in the NAFI now at Hangar 42. So this is the World War II canteen. And again, you can see all the tables and the tablecloths all laid out there. And this is where the guys would have had the dinner and the meals before going out on any flying missions. So there's a few old products. Few old products on the wall here. I'm sure none of your teachers are old enough to remember any of the packaging on these things here, but I'll let you argue amongst yourselves about that. So you can see that we've still got all the stuff in here that the RAF air crews would have been eating and drinking while they were waiting to go out on missions in World War II. So I'm just going to nip out again. We're talking about things that you can see when you come in here. You'll see the red fire buckets. And in this room, the interesting thing about this room is this is the room where we have all the artifacts from all the aeroplanes that were shot down in Lancashire during World War II. So I know you won't be able to see it clearly, but there's a propeller behind me there. So that was shot down. That was an American bomber that collided with another bomber over Clifton Marsh near Freckleton. There's another. This is a German propeller behind me. So that was a Ju-88 German bomber that was shot down in World War II by an aircraft that was scrambled from this very hangar. So again, you can see that's the engine that we dug up off the beach in Southport. And another example, and you'll see this in a minute, this is, you've seen it, you may have seen the engine of the car, your mum and dad's car. Well, this is the engine out of a Spitfire. This is called the Merlin Engine, made by Rolls-Royce. And we actually dug this out of somebody's pond in Wigan. So this aircraft had an engine problem, and the pilot sadly died in the accident, but this engine crashed with the aeroplane in somebody's garden near Wrightington Hospital in Wigan. And 70 years later, we dug it up, and there, as you can see, she's there complete, and came out of somebody's pond in Wigan. So when you come to see us at Hangar 42, you can see all these artifacts of aircraft that actually got shot down in World War II. As we come through, we'll just look behind me. These huts are what we call the scramble huts. So these were the rooms where the air crew would have gone to learn about the missions and wait before they actually started flying in a mission. You've probably seen it on the movies. When the German bombers came over, we actually rang that bell, and then we ran out onto the airfield and jumped into the aeroplanes, and off we went. So again, you can see in this room behind me, we've got all the tables and the chairs ready for mission planning. So all the pilots and air crew would have sat in here, and today, I don't know if you can read those names behind me, but we'll have all the names of all the pilots and what aircraft they're actually flying in here. And then this little shed. Now, this little shed, you'll see some German markings behind me there. These are bits of metal that have been taken off German aeroplanes that were shot down in World War II. And this little shed out on the airfield at Blackpool Airport, these sheds would have been scattered all over the airfield. And as you can see, there's tables and chairs with some games. Look, if you played checkers, that's what the pilots used to play. Dartboard on the wall there. And like I said, some comfy chairs for the guys to wait in before they get scrambled when the bell rings. And there's a picture of some of the lads sitting outside one of these huts, ready to go. So we're back out into the hangar. Hope you enjoyed seeing that. So we're back out into the hangar. We've got the Bowser there. We've seen Vicky and Lucy. The last thing I just want to quickly show you in here, I'm sure that some of the children in the school are very keen on playing video games. Well, here we've got behind me is a full-size Spitfire flight simulator. So if you've got a flight simulator on your PC at home, how about that? If you want one of these for Christmas, you need to write to Father Christmas this week for him to get this ready for you. Okay. So tell your mum and dad that John from Hangar 42 said you wanted one of these. So make sure you write to Father Christmas. So this year, your mum and dad, for a Christmas present or a birthday present, you can get them to come and learn to fly this Spitfire behind me. So again, there's another virtual reality. Got the Polish flag there. Look, we always commemorate the Poles that helped us out during the war. We've got another virtual reality suite here, which again, you've probably seen virtual reality headsets. You can all sit in there and you actually fly a mission over to Berlin. So that's quite an interesting thing for your mum and dad and for yourselves to do when you come to Hangar 42. And we'll give you a look in that perhaps some other time. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand back over to Keith now. I'm going to hand back over to Keith. He's just going to tell you a little bit more about the Hawker Hurricane. And then we'll end up with some of those questions that you've kindly put together for us. So I'll hand back over to Keith now. Over to you, Keith.
Hello, welcome back. Behind me is Harriet, our Hawker Hurricane. I did mention the Spitfire earlier, or the two Spitfires. They were first originally designed by a firm called Supermarine at Eastleigh, Southampton. It became Vickers Supermarine to produce enough of them. There were over 22,000 examples of Spitfire built. However, the Supermarine Spitfire was had a partner in the air, and that was the Hawker Hurricane. Now, according to TV, not always, they sometimes get it right. They're pretty good people on documentaries, but everybody assumes the Spitfire aircraft won the Battle of Britain. Not quite true. It helped, because there weren't that many Spitfires available during the Battle of Britain, but there were plenty of Hurricanes. I think about 2/3 more Hurricanes. Now, the Hawker Hurricane by far was the biggest asset, including ground gunnery to shoot Luftwaffe aircraft down, and any other type of asset. The Hurricane by far was the biggest asset during the Battle of Britain. The Germans first thought, when they first came across this aeroplane, that we're sending Pupils up, which is a word for a scooter. But after the Battle of Britain, one of their top commanders said, some Pupil, because it shot down plenty of Luftwaffe aircraft. If you look at her, she's a chunky old girl. She's a big aircraft, large aircraft, and looks a bit bigger than the Spitfire. And again, 8 Browning machine guns, the 303 machine guns. Later on in the war, they had a bomber variant of this. It could carry bombs, small bombs underneath, and also one with 4 cannons. So 4 big of those heavy cannons you saw earlier. So imagine being attacked by that. It would not be very pleasant. A very, very powerful aircraft. Some of these went to become night fighters so that they could attack bombers attacking Britain at night. They were painted very dark colours, black colours or dark grey. So as we move around here, both the Spitfire Hurricane, Lancaster bomber, Mosquito aircraft, that was another twin-engine fast aircraft, were powered by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. So if you look at this engine, and I'll give it, look how big that is. It's as bigger than your car engine, or where your dad would have a car, but it's nonetheless a big engine. So, and this would burn roughly 2 gallons a minute. So imagine that. If you were paying for 2 gallons a minute, you'd be out of pocket in no time. So we're coming up to the end of our tour now. And so I think if you want to ask any questions, fire away, please.
Thank you, Keith and John. So we've got a question from year 4, if you'd like to take over year 4.
What's that? Sorry.
Just go on, give me a question.
He just asked something.
No, he's saying, just ask a question. Right.
Anyone from year 4 or year 5? Anyone ready from year 5 to ask a question?
Yeah, we've got one.
How long did it take to plan
D-Day.
How long did it take to plan D-Day?
Just say that again, Curtis, if you don't mind. We didn't hear that then.
How long did it take to plan D-Day?
To plan D-Day took, would you believe, 3 years. It sounds a long time, but you've got to remember, Navy, Air Force and Army assets had to be used. They wanted to know what the strength of the Germans' forces were in occupied Europe and what they were expecting. So 3 years, 3 long years.
Year 6, have you got a question?
What's that?
Go on, another question, Curtis.
I have one national question.
Did some of the aircraft have any explosives?
Yeah, the aeroplanes that you've seen today, so the Spitfire and the Hurricane, could carry a little 250 kilogram bomb. So that was the smallest one that the Spitfire and the Hurricane carried. But the bigger bombers, the RAF bombers, could obviously carry a range of different bombs and explosives, from fire bombs right through to a lot bigger rounds called tall boys and grand slams, which would actually flatten whole streets in one go. So there was a bomb or a bullet for every single job that you wanted an aircraft to do in World War II, or a tank, or even a soldier. So bullets from the size of your pencil to the size of your mum and dad's car. So a whole range of things really, and you didn't want to be under them when they were falling either. Is there another one,
Yeah.
Kurt?
Year 4, have you got your question ready?
Yeah, sorry, it wouldn't allow us to unmute. Go on, read.
How old did you have to be to join the army and when you were forced?
And were you for?
Were you forced?
Normal age was 17 3/4 after training, your boot camp. So imagine that, you're 17 3. But the youngest fighter pilots during the Battle of Britain were 18. They did tell a lie about their age, some of them, to get into the Royal Air Force. But normally speaking, in the First World War, you could be younger, probably around 17, but 18 was the average for Army, Navy and Air Force.
18 years of age. So again, it gives you an idea when you leave school, you're 16, or if you go on to the sixth form, you're going to be 17 or 18 when you leave. And in 1939, the boys and girls were going straight into the armed forces. So it makes you think really about just how your granddads, your great granddads, probably your great grandparents were affected during World War II. It really, no matter what age you were affected quite badly by the war, and that's why we celebrate VE Day today. Is there another one, Curtis?
Yeah, we should have another one from year 6, maybe.
Harry? Stay there if you want. Just do it from there. We just, Harry's coming to the camera. The microphone.
Why weren't women allowed to fight?
Just
Why
repeat that.
Why weren't? Yeah, well, why weren't women allowed to fight?
Oh, right. Well, they were during when the World War II started and the First World War, ladies were usually doing different jobs to what the men were doing. So started fighting during World War II. We didn't realise it was going to go on for the 6 years that it actually did. So the decision was made to make sure that the girls helped the boys out by doing all the jobs that the soldiers left behind. So here in Blackpool, I don't know if you know, near Blackpool Airport, there's a great big factory next to where the shopping centre of Morrison's is now. It's a big factory there. They used to build Wellington bombers there, and a lot of the girls in Blackpool were employed rather than fighting. They were making the planes and the tanks and the bullets we just talked about, and the bombs. They were making all the bombs for the soldiers to go out and fight in the war. Plus, the girls were working in factories making parachutes. They were working on the farms, so even all the farmers went off to fight. So the mums and the grandparents all went off working in the fields. So even though they weren't firing bullets themselves, the women played a very, very significant role during World War II. And now the girls can fight, as you know, they can join the armed forces and be there on a front, a frontline role with the armed forces. But like I said, during World War II, because of the massive effort that was undertaken, the girls did a sterling job helping out by making sure that the Army, Air Force and Navy had the equipment to carry on the fight. So it was a good question, that, a really good question. Very good. Anything else? Any others, Curtis?
One more from year 5 and then one more from year 6.
Okay, Sophia, you ready?
What was the biggest battle of World War II?
Right, I'll take that. Now, when to say the biggest battle, you've got to look at in terms of Army, Navy and Air Force. Certainly the biggest air battle in human history was the Battle of Britain. It lasted that long. And the amounts of aircraft involved. So that's 1940. Roughly July to October 1940. One biggest air battle in history. The biggest land battle in history is very difficult because there was the Kursk tank battle in Russia. There was the Ardennes or Battle of the Bulge, which was the biggest involvement and amounts of deaths of soldiers. So Battle of the Bulge in Belgium. And Leyte Gulf was the biggest naval battle in history in the Pacific. That was the Americans fighting the Japanese. So 180 American warships and about 90 warships from Japan. Such a big battle, it lasted for days. So if that answers your question, to actually specifically say what was the biggest battle, you've got to look at it in terms of Army, Navy and Air Force. Great question. I hope that answered it.
Next one from year 6, Curtis.
How many RAF planes crashed?
How many RAF planes crashed?
All right. Well, this is a really, really good question, because in the battle, let's talk about the Battle of Britain in the first instance. In the Battle of Britain, 2,500 pilots were shot down and killed in the Battle of Britain. So a lot more aeroplanes were lost, because when they were fighting in the Battle of Britain, if you got shot down as an RAF pilot, you could jump out in your parachute if you were all right and land back in England and go and fly another aeroplane. The Germans couldn't do that because obviously they got captured. But just as many RAF aircrew died while training than they did in battle. So Bomber Command is a really good example. Bomber Command, so the guys who were flying over Europe and Berlin and dropping the bombs on the cities, 58,000 airmen died on active service with Bomber Command alone. So just to give you some sort of idea of how big that is, I know you're in Blackpool. Next door, we've got Fylde Borough, the borough of Fylde. 78,000 people live in Lytham St Anne's and the whole of the borough next door to Blackpool, 78,000. So if you imagine 58,000 men in Bomber Command died while flying missions, but 53,000, so that's another half again, 100% again, died while learning to fly the aeroplanes like is behind me. So just in Bomber Command alone, 100,000 pilots and aircrew died, which is probably about the population of Wyreborough, which is next to Blackpool. In total, we're looking around about 150,000 RAF aircrew died during World War II. So a massive, massive number, but the training was just as dangerous as the actual battles themselves. Because if you can imagine, I showed you a uniform of a young Polish pilot before. He was only 18 and he was sent up in a Wellington bomber with 5 other men to learn to fly that plane. Well, a lot of children and young people now don't learn to drive a car at 18. And in World War II, we were expecting young men of 18 to go up and fly a huge aeroplane and fly all the way to Germany and back. So again, a very, very high rate of people dying, sadly. So again, I hope that puts it into perspective. But in respect to World War II, they estimate that 60 million people, so 60 million people died in the armed forces, civilians on the ground, men, women, children, died across Europe and across the world. The estimate 60 million. So today there's 67 million of us live in Great Britain, in England, Scotland and Wales. So 67 million, you can imagine 60 million people out of Great Britain, how quiet it would be. So that was the impact of World War II across the world. And there wasn't really one country that didn't suffer the loss, either civilian or through the military in World War II. So again, this is really why we have to remember the 6th of May, 1945, and obviously the sacrifices that were made over those 6 years of the Second World War. But again, a really good question. Over to you, Curtis.
Right, well, thank you very much, John. I think that's all we've got time for because we've got some fun activities planned for the afternoon. So I just want to say a big thank you to you and Keith for doing this and organising it. I'm sure all the children across the school have loved it and really enjoyed watching. So once again, thank you very much.
And thank you to you. Enjoy the rest of VE Day.
Thank you.
You too. All right, see you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
All the kids are shouting by.
Oh,
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
waving.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.